apologize, there you go. The other thing that we needed to do when we talked about relocating the existing statues is that they're here. How do we display them, use them to their full potential? And so what we're suggesting is taking both the existing statues, one on the left, one on the right, and putting them with a new Venetian plaster wall in front of the existing confessionals. These statues would only be, the base would only be about 18 inches off the ground. They would be now something that people can approach. Now they're pretty high and hard to see, kind of. They would be down lower. We're looking at potentially putting on either side of them a wrought iron candle tree so that there could be 50 or 100 candles at each of the shrines that could be used for devotion as part of the shrine. There would also be a kneeler placed down in front of the shrine where you could come in at any time and pray, kneel, genuflect to the shrine. We envision people leaving flowers at the shrines as they do now. We're looking at changing some of the floor material around the confessional, and then also what doesn't show up here is the confessional door, opening it up a little bit more, putting a little bit more glass in it to give it a little bit more openness into the confessional as we move forward with that. So, old confessional, a lot of wood, new confessional, just going back you can see, and then you can also get a lot clearer image of, again, the choir of angels that will speak to the architecture of the Bornese style as we go through that. So moving back then, we have the new, going back to the exit, we're a little bit closer, going back to the exit again as we've circled all the way around the church. Quickly here, just so you can kind of get a sense of the overall feeling, here's a section looking, if I'm standing way on the choir side of the church, looking all the way across the church and what is there today, and then the potentially of what changes and what enhances in the new scheme with the choir of angels, the color, the gold leafing, the masonry, the color out in the narthex, new doors, kind of all show up in there. You can see the same kind of thing happens if I was standing now just looking through the church all the way across from the back, and what happens with color and images in the new. And the old section looking to the back. And you can see also on here, which points out in some cases you have these large mechanical diffusers on the wall. We're going to attempt the best we can to get rid of those and hide them. So we either lower down to the floor or in slots on the wall so that when we go back and repaint the walls and install the choir of angels, a lot of that hopefully might go away. You can see how it just still stands out right there in doing that. But that would be then looking to the back of that. The last piece of this then, kind of new for you, is the going to the chapel. And we've had some good discussions in the last couple weeks about the chapel. This is going back into the narthex space as you look at the chapel. So how we're moving into the chapel as it exists today, the chairs, the carpeted floor, the painting of Mary, the cross, the piano, the altar. There's been some issues about blurriness of light and when light comes in at certain times of the day. So we're looking at proposing a distinct difference in the chapel look. You can see we're showing something maybe similar to the church to connect it to with the ceiling and the stars. We create a light cove around the ceiling to light the up light in the ceiling, and then we'd also have some down light at key places. We've looked at installing some window shades, wood window shades, blinds on the windows that would respect the architecture. Again, you can see the masonry down low, and potentially some masonry at the columns in the church. This is a revised seating layout, which I'll show you here in a second, to not so much focus maybe on an end wall with no terminus, moving the piano over here next to the two service doors. Moving around here a little bit further, you can just begin to see as you move around in the space. We're looking at potentially putting all tile in here instead of carpet. And then taking again some Bornese art, and where these walls go blank, putting art into the same image or the same shape as the windows to kind of give the room a little bit more symmetrical feel, and doing the same thing at the entranceway with some wood and trim to pick up some of the architectural style of the room. If you go in there now, this is just kind of a flat beam across here. Really trying to maybe pull in some additional architecture in the room through the paintings and the woodwork. Quickly here, the last kind of thing is the floor plan as it exists today. With the seating, again, we're looking at something that maintains or decreases the existing seating very little, but that's the existing floor plan. One of the options, we've got 3 or 4 of these different options on new floor plans and new seating in here. In fact, we've done a lot of churches where the seating changes during the liturgical year. This could suggest an antiphonal layout, liturgy, the hours practiced potentially in the chapel. And so there are 3 or 4, as I mentioned, of these. So that just ends with going back out and kind of going into the church. It's been a good 3 months of working through that. There's a lot of detail here. We know this is like taking a drink out of a fire hose. It all comes to you at once, and what do you absorb and what don't you absorb? We're going to be around to answer questions. We've got materials up here. And I think Brother William might want to just end a little bit tying some of this art together with what we're doing inside of the church.
Simply put, what we would do with the murals is basically tell the whole infancy narrative story. So obviously the choir of angels is a reference to the angels at the birth of Christ. And the word Gloria would appear on some of the pennants that the angels are holding. Glory to God in the highest. The murals up in the front, one could depict the nativity, the other the return from the flight to Egypt. In the rear, the sculptures are depicting the Holy Family at Nazareth, and the other one depicts the Annunciation. So you see what I'm saying here? All of the art basically starts to lay out the whole story. Not just simply Christ is born in Bethlehem, but what we call the infancy narrative, the whole Gospel of Luke. So the star patterns on the ceiling obviously represent the heavens, and we would tie that in several places. So as all of that develops, that would become more and more thematically tied together. But I think the choir of angels will definitely reference the ancient tradition that the earthly liturgy is a participation in the heavenly liturgy, and that when we sing Holy, 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 as the preface says, we join with all the angels and saints as they proclaim your glory. So while you're singing and doing that, you're standing in the midst of the heavenly host. So it can really be quite exciting. With that, we have materials on the table over here that we can explain. What you're going to see over here is a large sample of a finish that can be put on the wall that will make it not look like drywall. It'll look more like a sanded plaster wall. Secondly, you'll see a sample of Venetian plaster. That's the polish piece. You'll see a board that has some of the stone samples, not in this shape, but rather the color and finish that could be used to bring the outside stone to the inside. You'll see some examples of the travertine that we're looking at for the sanctuary floor. You'll see a baby version of the door handle, which would actually be 36 inches tall, but you can pick it up if you like. You'll see 3 stations of the cross that are just the bronze portion that would be mounted on a piece of stone. So the stations wind up being about 24 by 24. The reason the scale of them would change is because they'll come further down the wall when the angels are all up above on the walls. And they're really made to be seen eyeball to eyeball and to be able to touch them because it's bronze, so you can put your hands on. So anyway, those are some little pieces to keep in mind. I think there's refreshments back there. You've earned them. And,
Questions first.
Oh, okay. All right.
Shall we do questions, or shall we have that?
I have one question.
Okay, a few questions. I know we told folks we'd let them get to pick up the folks at the checkout at school, but Mary Ann.
Well, the chapel is currently used as a cry room on the weekend, and I just want to know how that's being addressed.
The use of the chapel as a cry room.
The trend in the last 30 years, actually, has been to not have rooms that are dedicated spaces to put mothers and children in, because half the time the people you find in there are not mothers and children. They're disgruntled teenagers or whoever. And, you know, it's a way of, I'm here, but I'm not here. The other thing is that they have tended to become nurseries rather than a place that you step into if a baby is crying, a little person's having a problem, you do a little time out, and then you come back into the congregation. And the basic tendency has been to create the narthex and have enough glazing, and that's one of the reasons for the changes in the doors, so that if a little kid has a problem, you step out into the narthex, then you come back in. And you don't fulfill your obligation by being in another room watching it on TV. So that's basically the plan there. The connections for television would still be there for an overflow event or something like that. But your church, probably more than any church I've ever seen other than a major cathedral, has ambulatory space, you know, the surround that is vast. I mean, it's huge. So there's lots of room for overflow and all of that kind of thing. Set up chairs if you have to.
Okay. Let's see, Diane.
Father, I think that that was the same question I had, Mary Ann, and I think that's a great way to explain it. Can that be communicated so that our young families don't feel like they have been not thought of?
Of course, yes. That will be part of the, as we move forward, that would be very good. Pat?
Question, Father. The crucifix, that's going to be a totally new crucifix?
The crucifix, no, the crucifix corpus is the beautiful corpus we have.
Well, you notice his head is turned one way.
Oh, well, that's just a cartoon image. It's the same.
No, the one in the present church. If you look at it, his head is turned, but I thought his head was turned.
It is.
Oh. Well, it's the same corpus. However, it shows up on that image, but it's the same corpus. Okay. Jim?
Are there plans to do anything at all to the pews?
To the pews, to refinish the pews. I mean, same pews, but refinish them, revarnish them, and put new fabric and reupholster them. Kathy?
Will there be...
Is it Kathy? Do I have that right?
Will there be a place in the pews for a wheelchair?
Yes. Is there going to be handicapped accessible spaces in the pews?
Whenever you do a renovation like this, you're required by code to bring it up to speed. And in the new code, or the most recent code, you don't have a handicapped section. What you simply do is, spaced throughout the church, you have a place where a pew is shorter, and then there's enough space for someone to pull it up in a chair, and your companion can sit in the end of the pew, and you can sit together and that sort of thing. And the reason they're spread out all over is for the same reason that some of you like to sit in the back, some of you like to sit in the front, some of you like to sit in the middle, so you have all these options. But there is no section. Okay. And then you probably heard John say there's a ramp on both sides that's integrated right into the platform and into the architecture, so it doesn't look like an add-on. It will actually look like it's part of the design of the altar platform and very formal and all that good kind of stuff.
Okay, one more, Roger.
Are you doing anything to the priest's dressing room?
To the priest's dressing room, other than new flooring. So, no. That was one of the. That's one of the conditions that we, when we asked the Archbishop for permission to look at the renewal, that we weren't adding new spaces, we weren't expanding, doing anything else. We are using the space we have and renewing the space we have. Okay.